Welcome back to the WebWell Podcast. I'm Simon, and I'm thrilled to have you all with us today. I'm joined, as always, with co-host Ben McKinley and our special guest today, Sean Gates. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Simon, for that warm kickoff. Sean Gates, very exciting to have you on the podcast. Sean and I met each other back in, I would guess, around the late 90s or maybe 2000. At that time, I was working out of a home office with a partner of mine in a previous web design company, Mountain Hood Software. Sean was next door, dutifully honing his craft in, website development with his young family. And then, as chance would have it, my partner and I went our separate ways. Sean joined forces over there, and they worked together for a much shorter period of time. He realized that wasn't the best fit in a tighter timeline than I did, and went on to work not only as a freelancer, but also with some notable development companies, and then some big heavy hitters everyone's probably heard of, the likes of eBay, Rivian, and most recently Revable, which was a startup. So, and I don't want to discount that along the way there's been advisor positions and overlapping duties, moonlighting, etc. So really excited to have Sean on our podcast today. And Sean, I'd love just to hand it over to you and encourage you to share that journey with us in a little more detail.
All right. Thank you so much, Ben, for the intro. And thank you, Simon, for having me on here. It's been a pretty wild career, I would say. And I could go all the way back to those days when I was just starting out. One of the wild things that I would say I started from was just that I started from zero. I started absolutely from zero. My very first ever book that I bought talking about web development was HTML4 for Dummies. So I started from like the absolute bottom, right? And it's something where I am just so grateful for the opportunity that I've had over the years to learn so much and just explore and have great partners and have fantastic people that I worked with all over the country. And this type of career and this type of work that I've done has opened doors for me and just allowed me to just feed my curiosity, feed the side of me that I always need to be doing something new and something creative. So just as kind of an opening to who I am, I did start out teaching myself the web development practices, and I started my own side gigs and side things, and then got into doing it more fully as an actual practitioner and selling those services to other people. And then from that, I finished my degree, which wasn't in anything related to software or web development, and then continued to do all of that work on the side. And it opened doors for me, like you said, Ben, at some great places. So over the years, I've worked for myself, I've worked for startups, I've worked for small and medium and enterprise businesses, Fortune 50 companies. And just all along the way, it's very interesting because from the smallest of small to the largest of large, all of them have kind of the same needs. And especially when it comes to software on the web, the things that they're trying to accomplish are very similar. The scale and the distribution of that effort can be very different. Obviously from a startup, somebody's wearing a lot of hats, somebody's doing a lot of things and trying to know a lot of things. And then on the, enterprise side, somebody might become an expert in something very, very narrow. And they might be that specific person to know very deeply about a certain subject area, and they can become an expert in those things. And so there's, advantages and disadvantages to either side of those, right?
Interesting.
And it's one of those things where I've gone deeply in certain areas, but have actually kept myself very broad in a lot of areas too, where I just have a breadth of understanding of things, but also some very specific areas where I've gone very deep on some things.
Interesting. And tell me I always love this notion of software being this fertile ground where people can just, explore their curiosity and go from, knowing nothing to, adding a tremendous amount of value and pulling down exciting salaries, not to mention, from an equity position if they're starting their own entities. But what was your track of study in college?
I studied management information systems.
Okay.
So if you're thinking about back in time, management information systems was designed to be kind of that you're kind of like an engineer who's building reports. And you would build these reports and report systems for senior leadership, usually C-suite individuals. So management information systems was managing those systems for reporting. And so there was a little bit on the side of software, just a tiny bit, a little sliver. I had one software class in my entire, college career. So I had one software class. And so really management information systems just set me up for the ability to kind of know and understand the audience which I would be working with. So, executives and business practices. So I had accounting classes and other things like that. So yeah.
Interesting. Well, that's great. We've got several members of our team that I feel have followed a similar track, and I just think it's an awesome story to tell, and what a democratizing opportunity for so many people that are inclined that way. Myself not being inclined that way, I'm so grateful to be surrounded by folks that are. But I do love that it doesn't require some pedigrees like certain other industries or roles. So that's really exciting. And then talk to us a little bit. So I imagine initially it was very broad and thin when you were, building very lightweight solutions for clients. But what were some of those areas that you found yourself going really deep into during your career?
Some of those things tend to be really on the front end side and UX patterns and user experience. So really getting into the kind of psychology and the understanding of how to build proper front end capabilities without sacrificing the capabilities and what a user needs, right? So I've at my time at eBay, we went really deep into accessibility and the capability of any user to use the site. And that was something that was really very interesting. And it opened up a can of worms because you've got competing priorities. You've got the ease of use for a sighted, abled user compared to someone who is unsighted or disabled in some way and needing to use keyboard capabilities to navigate a site. And so you've seen a lot of legislation around that, and you've seen a lot of standards types of things, but there actually is a whole lot of gray area there. People may not understand that, but building capabilities for sites still has a lot of interpretation that engineers and even UX pattern folks get the chance to decide how to implement a solution. So yeah, that's a deep area that I went into for a while, and it was a lot of fun.
I can see that too, even from a design perspective, like what we're willing to compromise, right? There's the legalities of it. Am I going to get sued for this? Like even, I mean, we do this for clients when we audit their sites for accessibility. We want to make sure it is accessible. 100%. I have no qualms with that. But there's this gray area like you're talking about where like, you know what though? Design wise, this just is going to look really cool. This looks great. So like we kind of walk that fence. So I think there's the due diligence of making sure it's the common sense accessible. And then there's that extra layer of like, okay, but we're going to sacrifice this a little, lose some points, if you will. And then we're going to do everything behind the scenes of metadata and how we're actually doing it for keyboard, the tab ahead and whatnot, screen readers to be able to access it, but it's going to still look good. So I hear that battle from my perspective as well.
Accessibility is a really interesting area, and I would say that one of the things that people who are thinking about whether or not they are in compliance or whether they need to do certain things, there are some tools that are out there that are helpful for those things, but there actually is a lot of, to kind of use your term, Ben, fertile ground there for innovation and capabilities for accessibility. And I would actually say too, there's an interesting thing here too that you kind of brought up, Simon, which is like it might look good and function well, but if we change the behavior or something, it actually might work best for everyone. There's actually like even a cognitive, improvement that can be done for everyone, and it kind of makes sense to everyone, changing things. And I'm a keyboard junkie, so I actually totally love the capability of being able to navigate sites with a keyboard and do things with my keyboard, because using a mouse is just too far away, right? And so just keeping my hands on the keyboard and doing things there tends to be really ergonomically well for me. I love it. So.
And do you have one of those like ergonomic keyboards?
No.
Okay.
I just have a Mac keyboard. But again, it's like I'm lazy. So
yeah. Well, I am curious too. What are your thoughts on the overlays for like Accessibility and some of these others? What's your take on that?
So that's a very interesting area because one, you are trying to solve for the user. You're trying to allow the person who's visiting your site to be able to use it. But I do think that those can mask a lot of things. Those can mask the proper way to actually kind of build things and make them right for the user. And so again, we're going back to that trade-off, right? Which is, hey, we want to build something nice and clean, and UI wise, it's visually appealing and is great to look at, and kind of for people who are abled and visually not impaired, they can have a great experience. But then there's the other side where you kind of want to you want to actually build for everyone, and I think those things, those overlays, they mask the kind of the effort that you are not putting into a site. So I think they are kind of and I'm not going to use the term very forcefully, but a little bit of a cop out of those things. So if you want to actually be building an accessible capability into your site and be accessible to people, you're not going to rely on those things. But they can be kind of a bridge for you. So until you're capable and able, and maybe even have the budget to go and do it, you're gonna use one of those things because they can get you halfway there, type of thing. They are not a silver bullet. That'll just be very clear. They are not a silver bullet. They have their own issues. They can only cover so much ground in providing accessibility for screen readers and navigation. They require their own configuration. They require their own support as well. So you're kind of trading off, some things.
Yeah, and we did a pretty thorough review on behalf of one of our clients, and there were some nice things like muting some of the like pulsing images and different things that might impact folks that aren't immediately on a lot of those accessible scans. But a lot of the other stuff, it looked like, well, it's not going to help you avoid legal challenges. But it does let people kind of tailor the experience. So like you said, trade-offs. Well, I think that's a nice segue into our next step in the podcast, and that's really kind of unpacking this idea of what tools are important and evolving as we look towards the future. And Sean, you had some interesting thoughts here. You mentioned some competing ideas. Why is building for the web so complicated, and why is building for the web getting easier? So yeah, I'd love to have you unpack that a little bit for us.
Yeah. I kind of have a funny saying when I'm talking to people about my experience, and you'll probably have a kind of a similar feel to this, Ben, which is we've been doing it so long that we kind of have, I say, I've forgotten more than the people who are coming into the industry now actually know. Like, I've forgotten more things about the web than is currently being worked on. And that's kind of just a funny way to say it's always evolving, and things are changing rapidly. Anywhere from, a couple of years to a year or a few months, things can change very quickly in what technologies are used and the adoption of the software, the creators, the engineers, what they're building. So what I mean by those competing ideas is because on one side, you do have the building for the web is complicated. As an engineer and building on the engineering side, it absolutely can be complicated. There is a lot to talk about as it relates to the technologies behind the scenes, powering the sites like Wix or Webflow, or powering the sites like eBay or Zillow, or these large sites that have very complex capabilities. There's a lot that go into that. I know that you guys on one of your more recent podcasts talk about caching capabilities and CDNs and DNS, right? And what's crazy is that that's kind of a deep field. You can go into that, and the technology behind all of those things is really deep and vast. In fact, there are competing ideas about how to do caching. There's competing ideas about how to handle your DNS and routing and other things, right? Like, people have different opinions. And that's to say that that's kind of, some people might see it on the surface and go, oh, that's pretty simple. Like, there's these things that you use and they're pretty straightforward. But they can be deep and vast in that area. And so picking the right technology can be challenging and hard. But on the other side, the idea that the web is getting easier and the software that we're creating and the outputs that we're having is getting easier is absolutely true on its own terms as well, because you see things going faster. You see engineers being capable of having AIs assist them in writing code, and you see generative AI building things very quickly. So, other people who are benefiting from the web and the technologies that are coming out today are people who can build campaigns and build ad systems that are very quick and fast now, and they can generate advertising and campaigns very quickly, or work with work with their counterparts in a much more seamless way. So the web is making things faster and easier, and building the web is getting faster and easier. The tools are there. I think of something like Next.js, which has been a fantastic tool that I've used at the last few places. And it just has accelerated my capability, because I'm able to pull something off the shelf and it has all the tools. It's solved things like caching and browser technologies for images and JavaScript bundles and all of those things. It does those things for you, as well as server-side rendering and client-side rendering and all of the things that go into decisions that an engineer has to make. But it's made it more approachable. And so I don't have to know the internals It's great to know the internals of what those tools are doing. But at the end of the day, I also want to pick the right tools and allow me to go faster. So it's kind of that dichotomy. It's really interesting. You can go fast, but it also is complicated. When you get under the covers and you start to look at what's happening, man, there's so much complicated stuff happening.
Hey, Sean, thanks for the callback on the last episode about CDN and caching.
Yeah.
And that came off the heels of some news with Cloudflare, that we decided we wanted to chime in on, because we've used that tool to great success. So I think as in our notes, we wrote it as the pendulum swinging wildly with technology, right? So how do you, and you just mentioned Next.js, like how do you choose the right tool or even pattern?
Yeah, that's really challenging, but there are some definitive things that I think they're kind of mantras to live by when you're talking about these things. One of them is obviously, do you need to build for scale? Do you need to build for speed? Do you need to build for cost? Right? Again, these are kind of basic, company principles, right? Do I need to go fast? Do I need to go cheap? Do I need to go with large feature sets or small feature sets, right? Like, again, these are decisions that you're having to make in choosing a tool. And so, again, it comes down to me almost always, what is my customer need? What is the need of the customer, the end customer, the result that this is going to be used for? What is it that they need? And at the end of the day, it all comes down to that, because it's going to match up customer needs with those other needs of the business: cost, speed, and feature set, right? So those things are really what you need. And so, and again, I come back to the way that Apple operates, right? Apple's ecosystem is one where it's focused on the user and what the user needs to accomplish. And so you can see that from both sides, the consumer or even the business, right? The business might need something that's very simple and easy to publish, and the consumer needs something where this is easily digestible and I am getting the information that I need. I'm getting the task done that I need to get done. So those things, I would say, go for the thing that covers the 80%, right? It doesn't need to cover the 100%. You can always kind of augment those things, do the 80% and kind of focus on that and see if the product or tool that you're using can fit the 80%, and then the rest can be made up usually.
Those are good insights. This next one struck a chord as well. For years, considering we've largely built sites in Evergreen, increasingly now WordPress, Shopify, and Webflow, but over the years, definitely put a lot of energy into Evergreen and that whole idea between build versus buy. In our world, that is, are we going to custom build this module, this capability that's going to integrate with everything else on your site, or are we going to sort of buy something off the shelf and then look to integrate that via API or iframe or otherwise? But I'd like to understand how you're thinking about that.
One of the real challenges in especially the big corporations is they always have that conversation of build versus buy. Like, it always happens. Like, should we build this or should we buy something that's off the shelf? And kind of going back to that last comment about how do you choose the right tool, build versus buy is part of that conversation too. A lot of times where, hey, we've evaluated every tool out there and none of them meet the 80% that we're looking for. What do we do now? Do we have to go out and actually build something that's custom made for us? So I think a lot of people also misunderstand sometimes the build portion, where they are ready to take on the risks. They are also ready to take on the cost of doing something, right? There's risk and cost involved over a very long term, because once you put something into play, right? And you are supporting it, and it can be risky. Also, the one other thing that comes to mind is you need to have the know-how and the expertise to build that thing, right? If you're going in cold and you've never done it before and you've never built this thing before, you're gonna see all the pitfalls along the way. You're gonna fall into every trap there is, right? So that's why it's really, really great to have people, right, who maybe have been down that path before, that you can either talk to or you have on your team, or you're partnering with, to kind of help you understand what it means to build something on its own. And to your comment about Evergreen, right? Like, you guys have built this capability, this tool for the CMS, right? And if you're going to match it up against some other tool, you're going to already, just looking at someone else who's built the same type of thing, go, oh, I can see how they solved this, or I can see the gap that they have in their tool. I can see the issues that someone might have. Like, coming from multiple CMSs that I've worked on before, certain things are very easy in some and super hard in others, right? Like, and you can see the philosophical differences in those tools. So as far as, build versus buy, building is very challenging. Getting started is hard. You're going to have a very long tail of things that you're going to need to fix and manage and support over a long period of time. And so just be ready for that. That's a challenge you're going to want to take on. And I would say one more last thing about that, which is you're also going to want to tie that to business outcomes and things that you want to accomplish. So if your product is the thing that you're building, fantastic. That there's an alignment there. You're going to have ownership. That's the value add that you have for people. But if the thing that you're building and doing and wanting to have capability for is not the product, it might be an avenue to other products that you sell. So say you're in e-commerce, but you're building the widget. You're not selling you don't need the e-commerce platform. You don't need to go out and build an e-commerce platform. You continue to sell your widgets and understand how to sell the widgets, and you can have a partner to help you with the e-commerce side. So it's got to align with your business objectives for sure.
Interesting. Well, and you touched on a really important piece that I think would be a great sort of final topic to jump on, which is, why is having agency partners important?
Yeah. So Ben, you and I started out, on the same pathway together. I ended up going more into kind of the corporate side and, working in companies and building web apps for other companies to provide value. Whereas I know that you've stayed on this course for a very long time, and I've seen the steadiness of what you've done, which is awesome. I, all along the way, have always had that spot for myself of working with partners, because there are things that I always know that other people can do for me that I am not necessarily wanting to do for myself, or it's not cost effective for me to do it for myself. We just talked about the build versus buy. It can be very expensive going down the build yourself way. And so, partners, someone to come in and craft that and be the expert for you in the room can be a fantastic thing to unlock your capabilities. And so we've had partners, at several places that I worked at that were just, fantastic in, spinning up things that we needed very quickly because we didn't have the expertise in that area. And so I absolutely, they're super important because you can you can get to your destination with a partner. Again, the old kind of cliche of, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, have someone with you, right? Go together. And so I really do think that partnerships can help you go very far, and do things that you wouldn't normally be able to do on your own.
Hey, Sean, as we close up this, one of the last questions I always like to ask guests are future plans for you, and then shameless plugs. So future plans, what are you looking towards 2025 for? Like in both projects and work and challenges. And then lastly, like I said, shameless plug. If someone had any questions, how do they reach out? How do they get a hold of you? How do they follow you? Like LinkedIn? What are your handles? Yeah.
Perfect. So I'll start with the latter first. Actually, it's a little bit easy. I'm on LinkedIn. That's like literally I call myself a LinkedIn junkie because I am. That's my social platform, which is really sad. But just search up Sean Gates. You should be able to find me really easy. I've got a few thousand followers on there, so it's a lot of fun. As far as what's ahead, for me, just rolling off this role as the CTO of WebWell, I'm really looking to a future in the web industry that's really, really super bright. Like I don't just the things that people are coming up with and the capabilities that are out there. I think we're going to see just an acceleration of. Again, the web has been democratizing, like you said, Ben. Like it's given us the capability of like starting from zero, like bootstrapping. People have bootstrapped some amazing stuff just right from the get-go. I think of this guy this year who started the million checkboxes. I don't know if you guys ever saw that, right? Like, okay, so there was this guy who made a website and he allowed anybody to check or uncheck checkboxes on the website. And some kids, some high school students came up with some really crazy capability of like drawing pictures and putting messages in and like all these weird things to do it. But the demonstration was also a demonstration of web capabilities. How do I render 1 million checkboxes on a web page and also keep state with all of those things and keep it all, in check so that people can't abuse it. And like all of these things. And that was the problem the guy was just exploring. How do I build something that needs these massive amounts of capabilities? So it's fun stuff like that, right? I think of the late 90s, early 2000s, where people were building just some wild stuff just to play around with the web. But that to me is what's coming in 2025 is just you're going to see continued capabilities of people to build things on top of this platform of the web that just we haven't seen before, and to tell other people, explore it, like explore that creativity with your partners, see what they are willing to try with you and what you're going to be able to do. One of them, another example is there's a guy who's running an email embed. I don't know how to explain it. It's embedded in the emails selling. And so he does shopping carts and checkout right from inside your Gmail email. So it's like literally we send you a marketing email and you can just check out. Like you don't even have to go to my website. Wow. Like stuff like that where you're being creative and you're thinking about how can I win the day. And I think it's super bright. Things are super bright.
That's awesome. That's cool. I think the takeaway from my perspective is two words bubble up. One is curiosity. You've said it several times. And I think that has sparked a career for you, is just continuing to scratch these itches as they come up. And another one I think inherent in that is courage, right? To take these chances, both as a professional, as a human, but also for these organizations. And I think, at Cascade, we're always looking for those courageous brands and organizations that are willing to take these bets and try things, because it's unknown, but the potential out there feels unlimited. So yeah, those are really optimistic words to share here on this fall day in 2024.
Yep. Well, I appreciate you guys being here with me. This was awesome.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks for joining. And as always, all the listeners out there can reach out and send us some questions or topic ideas. It's at WebWell@CascadeWebDev.com. Thank you all for joining.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Sean.